He sat by the window, watching the wind rustle the leaves. Nothing had happened outside the window. No tragedies, no revelations, no signs. An ordinary day. Most days are like that. He called them empty. "Why are you looking for meaning?" I once asked my stranger in the park. "Because otherwise all this is just a series of coincidences." "But what if that's the point?" He didn't answer then, but the words remained. For many years he tried to squeeze life into a framework. Happiness, purpose, destiny. He searched in books, in religions, in other people's eyes. He collected meanings like others collect stamps, but none of them took root. They all seemed temporary, like sand casts. One evening, when the loneliness became quieter than usual, he realized maybe life doesn't have to mean anything. Maybe it doesn't have to climax, doesn't have to explain itself. Like music, not for the sake of a pleasant note. Like breathing, not for the sake of the final certainty. He left the house and walked, without a goal, just because he could. Walking is enough. He helped the old lady carry her bag. He smiled at the child and gave a coin to the street musician. Every action was not why, but because. He stopped asking, and for the first time he felt inside there was not emptiness, but silence. Pure, like the surface of water before the first circle. The meaning did not come, but it was no longer needed. Or maybe this is where the answer lies. Life is like a canvas without a picture. Not to find a picture, but to allow yourself not to paint at all. He returned home in the evening, and in every morning shop window, in every gleam of a lantern, he saw himself. Not the one who was searching, but the one who simply was. No more, no less. Before, that would have been his confidence. He was afraid to be just, afraid to be anyone. But now, there was no fear. There was a strange feeling of surprise, as if he was no longer obliged to win, to achieve, to prove, to become someone. He stopped at the window and ordered the simplest drink, sitting down next to it. And I watched. People were passing by, talking on the phone, laughing, crying, hurrying, and all this had no additional meaning. But it had its own beauty. This is where the quiet revelation lies. Life is not a book with morals. Do not answer a question with a corresponding answer. Not a puzzle to be solved. She's like rain. She comes. She just comes. Not for the harvest, not for the rainbow. Just because it can. He realized that living was enough. Not for the sake of anything. In spite of everything. And if the meaning of life is in its absence, then perhaps this is freedom. Don't look for freedom. Be free. Freedom to live without asking why. And in this silence there is more truth than in thousands of answers. When he left the kitchen, the streets were already darkening. The light from the street lamps fell softly, like oblivion. People were still passing by, some alone, some in pairs, some forever in a hurry. He no longer looked at them with longing or envy. He simply looked. With each step he took, he peeled off the old lid. Ideas about importance, fears of missing out, the desire to be something more. He didn't feel small. He felt real. He once thought that lack of meaning was a death sentence, but it turned out to be liberation. The meaning is like a chain, and the meaning is a devil, like the sky. He remembered how, as a child, he had lain on the grass, looked at the clouds, and realized that they were ships. He had not asked himself why he was doing this. He had simply been. And maybe going back doesn't mean finding a new path. And that means forgetting that you lost it. He walked past the mirror in the shop window. Lately, not a seeker, not lost, not a winner. Just a man, tenacious. And this is what is priceless. Not because it's part of a grand plan, because nothing else is needed. And perhaps in this silent world, I know there is an elusive meaning. Like breathing, imperceptible but alive. Like a step, without direction but forward. Life is not meant to be understood, but to be experienced. And he allowed it. He walked along the embankment where the river swayed quietly under the light of the lanterns. The water flowed without asking why. It knew no shores, no meaning. It simply flowed, and it was beautiful. At that moment, he thought, if life is like a river, maybe I have tried too long to direct its course. Maybe the point is not to control the flow, but to learn to swim in it. He felt better. For the first time in many years, he felt no tension or anticipation. There was no goal, And that is why every moment became fulfilling. He sat down on a bench. Nearby, a woman was feeding pigeons. A girl was drawing with chalk on the asphalt. An elderly man was reading a newspaper. None of them were looking for the meaning of life. They just lived. Maybe this is the answer hidden in plain sight. Don't search, don't ask, don't complicate. And to be, to the fullest extent. He closed his eyes and just listened. The rustle of leaves, the laughter of a child, the footsteps of passers-by. Life didn't need to be pursued. It sounded on its own, like music without words. And he realized, the point is not to find the why, but to say yes. Yes, every morning. Yes, to every unknown. Yes, your vulnerability. Yes, this infinitely simple and beautiful semantic nonsense that we call life. He stood up, took a breath of the cold evening air and walked on. Without a map, without a goal, but no longer alone. After all, somewhere, in the very heart, meaning came, he finally found himself. Night covered the city with a soft, almost imperceptible blanket. The streets were empty. Lonely lights were lit in the windows of houses like a reminder. Someone is still awake. Someone is still alive, without traces, without consequences, simply because the heart beats. He walked slowly, feeling that each step was neither in the past nor in the future, but in a deep moment. And with each surprise, the feeling grew stronger in him. I am obliged not to understand, that I must be a part of this. A passerby asked him for directions, and he answered, not because it made sense, but because he could. Someone lost a glove, he picked it up and left it on the fence. A small, insignificant action. But maybe it is precisely such actions that constitute the soul, without grandiosity, without explanation, just kindness, just participation, just life. He remembered thinking before, I have to leave a mark. Now, sometimes it is important not to stay, but not to erase other people's. There were no more questions in my head. Only space remained, warm, deep, like the silence between the stars. He looked up at the sky, black velvet, scattered light, and not a single star knew why it was shining. No light, he chuckled. Maybe he doesn't need to know either. Maybe it's enough to just be a spark in someone's night. Even if it's just for a moment, even if it's by accident. Let it be meaningless, but with real light. And when he approached his house, the key turned easily in the lock. He entered into silence, not cold but alive. And for the first time in many years, I felt neither emptiness nor the need to fill it. Because maybe the most honest form of life is when you don't know why you live, but you really live. He put the kettle on, and while the water was boiling, he simply stood in the kitchen, leaning his palms on the table. Previously, at such moments, an anxious feeling would come. I need to do something. I need to be the key. I need to move. Now it was quiet. Not in the room, inside. He poured boiling water into a mug and sat down by the window. Steam rose above the tea, dissolving in the stains. He looked at the street, without thoughts, without plans. And I realized, here it is, presence. Not a future that is always out of reach. Not the past, which was always restored. And this very moment, the present, there was no point in it. No, it was full. He remembered how he used to say to himself, you have to become someone. Now I thought differently. What if I already exist? If to be is the goal? He remembered his tired pursuit, for the calendar, for understanding, for being needed. How many times has he tried to prove his existence, to others, to himself, to time? Now, no need. He understood. You are needed not because you have found meaning, because you're alive, because there are moments when you smile, when you listen to music, when you smell the aroma of tea, when you see a drop of rain rolling down the glass. He finished his tea. The light outside the window became a little dimmer. Somewhere in the distance, dogs began to bark. Someone closed the window. Someone fell asleep. The world continued to exist, and this is support. If the meaning of life is its absence, then perhaps that is precisely where its infinite beauty lies. To be anyone and everything at the same time. To be a moment. To be a breath. To be yourself, without the need to be anyone else. He stood up, turned off the light, and lay down easily on the bed. And for the first time in a long time, I fell asleep without any questions. The sun came not as an escape, but as a return. Soft, warm, no faces, no symbols, no messages. It's just darkness. Not frightening, but concealing. A darkness in which there is no need to search, fear, or justify oneself. He woke up at first light. No alarm clock, no reason. Just because the morning had come. And that was enough. The world was here again. In the crack in the ceiling. In the creaking of the floorboards. In the breath. He didn't know what the day was doing, and he didn't try to guess. He just got up, washed himself, and drank some water. And everyone present felt a growing feeling inside. Life is effortless if you know how to experience it. He went outside. The trees had already woken up and the birds began their unknown conversation. And none of them knew why. But it all continued because that was their nature. And maybe being yourself is the only honest meaning. Passing by the bench, he saw an old man. He looked at him with such attention for the first time in the morning. They met eyes. There were no words. He had no need. Just a moment. General, silent. And in this silence there is something to deepen any essence. He keeps walking. The sun rose slowly, painting the world gold. Ahead are streets, turns, faces, random kind gestures, and perhaps loneliness. But now he was not afraid of him. What I understood, emptiness is not the enemy. Emptiness is the home you return to when you let go. He did not look for any more ways. He just walked, and every step sounded like an answer. He walked along the street where the shop windows had not yet woken up, where the asphalt was wet from the night rain, and only the rare steps of passers-by echoed his own. The world did not ask him who he was, and he worked too. He used to believe in leaving a mark, becoming something, someone, leaving a message through the ages. Now to be is already enough. Leaves a trace. It is a matter of rain. It is a matter of time. Man is created to pass, quietly, sincerely passed. He sat down on the same bench where he often passed without noticing. Now he just sat down. On the bench there was morning wind, the smell of bread from the bakery across the road. And he is like a part of this simple landscape. A dog came up to him. Without a collar, without asking for food, he was there. He didn't stroke. He didn't speak. He just looked. And the dog looked back. No need for language. No need for meaning. Two beings, here now. And there was more truth in this than in 100 books, more peace than in any dogma. He remained on the bench until morning came. People passed by. Some laughed. Some swore. Some looked at their phones. Life flowed without asking permission. And this was her unconditional beauty. When he got up, the day was already breathing full. He did not feel tired, did not feel rushed. There was only a quiet, yes, yes today, yes to myself, yes to the emptiness from which everything real is born. And perhaps this yes is the closest meaning that a person has managed to utter. By evening, the sky was gray again. Not a storm, not a tragedy, just clouds. He stood by the bridge and watched the water reflect the dim sky. Nothing was damaged. But in this nothing, there was depth. The water flowed, the clouds moved. And he is also part of this movement, without a goal, without an ending, just in the flow. He thought, maybe life is not given to be understood. Maybe it is given to learn to trust. Not for yourself, peace. Not for the mind, for the flow. Before, he clung to his beliefs like handrails. Now he stood without support and did not fall. He just breathed. And each conclusion did not bring meaning, but life is pleasant. Behind us are the years of waiting, the years of sound. There is uncertainty ahead, but he was between them. Calm, quiet, like a room without an echo, like a morning without a plan. He came home by a different route, not because it was a change, but because I wanted to break my habit. And this is freedom. Walking past a shop window, I saw my reflection, the same person, but a different look. Not expecting, not lost, not struggling, just a spectator, tenacious. And he realized, life is not about finding meaning, and about stopping someday. And I understand that you don't need to look for him anymore. And this is not a defeat. This is peace. He approached his house and paused for a moment at the door. Not because I was getting mixed up, but because I felt that something had come to mind. Not on the outside, on the inside. He opened the door, split up, and walked into the kitchen. Everything was in our corners, a cup on the shelf, a light above the table, silence. But now it was not just silence, it was consent. He poured himself some water, not to quench his thirst, but simply because it was part of life. Every action was filled with a strange but warm fullness. He didn't feel better. He didn't feel superior. Simply whole. Sat by the window like yesterday. Same world. But now he didn't expect anything from him. And this is liberation. He understood. If there is no meaning in life, it means you are free from the duty to be someone. Free to just be. And he accepted it. Without joy. Without sadness. With the dark calm with which the sea receives the sun every evening. Don't ask questions. Without asking for persecution, he closed his eyes. And in this silent moment, life just was, and that was enough. It always was. He just hadn't heard it before.